So to discuss some of the key points that Professor Samarajiva raised, I would like to invite Mr. Prajeet Balasubramaniam, co-founder of and managing director of Blue Ocean Ventures, and also the co-founder and director of the Lankan Angel Network. Many of you asked me who he was. Here he is. Prajeet, you can take a seat. Thank you. So just to introduce Prajeet further, he is currently the vice president of the Sri Lanka-Singapore Business Council. Apart from this, Prajeet is also involved in the British Business Council, Maldivian Council, and a few other business councils to promote bilateral trade. Previously, he served at Federal Mogul and United Technologies Co. He holds a degree of MCom from the University of Sydney, specializing in management and marketing, and a degree of electric engineering from the University of Wollongong, Australia. So that is Prajeet for you. Next, to discuss exchange control, we have from the Central Bank, Ms. Shahnaaz Kamaleen, who is an assistant controller at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. During her career at the Central Bank, she has been attached to the exchange control department throughout, and she has been working in the area of foreign investment and capital account transactions. Prior to joining the bank, she was a lecturer at the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce at the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Shahnaaz obtained her Bachelor of Management from the University of Jayawardhanapura and completed her MSc in Public Policy from the National University of Singapore, I think the prestigious Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So Shahnaaz for you. And next to discuss taxation, Professor Samarajiva said how benign the taxation system here is. To further discuss this and see whether it is actually so, we have Mr. Sujiva Mudilage from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who is a partner. He has extensive experience in this area, and not only in this area, in many other areas where he has been able to promote Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan companies. 25 years of experience in public accounting practice and in the industry in Sri Lanka and overseas. He's currently a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Sri Lanka. He has served on regulatory bodies such as the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board. He is also a member of the governing boards of the University of Colombo School of Computing, Postgraduate Institute of Management, the National Institute of Business Management. He is also a member of the Financial System Stability Consultative Committee of the Central Bank. This is actually a private sector committee at the Central Bank where we have them, where we consult them to understand the pulse of the economy. He recently completed his tenure as the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, fellow of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. I think he really will know what he's talking about, so there's nothing to worry. And to discuss immigration, we have from the Department of Immigration, Deputy Controller, Mr. Ranjit Vimalasuriya. He's a Class 1 officer of the Sri Lanka Administrative Service and holds a BA in Sociology from the University of Peradeniya, an MA in Sociology from the University of Kelaniya, and Diploma in Public Administration. Prior to his current role in the Immigration Department, he has served as the Assistant Divisional Secretary to Sevenagala, Assistant Secretary to, in the Ministry of Land, Irrigation and Environment, and also the Divisional Secretary of Dompe. So we have a very diverse and knowledgeable panel. So we will start a discussion. We will first discuss, I will pose some questions to the panelists, and then we will open the floor for questions. To start off, Professor Samarajiva highlighted some areas that I think we can base our discussion on. Let's start with immigration. Ranjit, can you explain how people can come and work in Sri Lanka. They don't necessarily have to be people of Sri Lankan origin, because we actually have in our audience people who are not of Sri Lankan origin. And if you're not a citizen, very simply, what are the ways that you can come to work in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, Kanchana, that actually two ways, as Professor mentioned. Then, if you come for working here, so you need to get the proper visa for working. And if the person is an ex-Sri Lankan, he can come and stay here, but under that visa, the people are not permitted to work. That visa is granted for on and off travelers who are willing to come here and stay for longer. So, obtaining visa for working, actually in Sri Lanka we don't have that, the work permit visa is granted for working here, that we call it as working visa. So ex-Sri Lankans easily come and stay here under tourist visa and apply for the resident visa. They don't need to get the prior approval for entering into the country. But for the foreigners, before their arrival, the Sri Lankan counterpart has to apply that visa on behalf of them, the people who are willing to come. So that is we call as entry visa, which is the prior approval for entry into the country. That is decided by the company, as well as that should be recommended by the line ministry. For instance, if it is related to the environmental activities, the company objects are related to environmental activities, that ministry has to recommend employing that particular person in Sri Lanka. So with that visa, that person has to enter into the country, then after the long-term visa is issued by the immigration.
Is this the same for BOI and non-BOI? Is there a difference?
Yeah, the same procedure is there. Actually, for BOI, we request only the recommendation from BOI and Ministry of Defense.
So basically what you're saying is that to obtain work permit, that there isn't so much of a difference between BOI and non-BOI, you have to submit the relevant documentation.
Yeah, mostly same.
Professor Samajiri,
no, but I thought if it's BOI, you need only the BOI approved.
No, actually, BOI
will get the other one.
MOD, Ministry of Defense recommendation from the Ministry of Defense.
But otherwise, you have to go directly to whatever the relevant, and that can be complicated. Not their fault.
I think these are the things that we need to raise and see how we can sort of smoothen out as we progress. I think that's why we have this.
Because part of the problem is we have so many ministries. I have great difficulty figuring out which ministry I belong.
Ranjit, just to ask another question. So we are talking about people coming in on work permit. Let's say a foreigner wants to become a Sri Lankan or get permanent residency. How does that work?
There's no possibility of become a Sri Lankan actually. Only ex-Sri Lankan can become a Sri Lankan again. Foreigners, we don't grant the citizenship for foreigners. Right?
Yeah. Adar Clark was never a citizen. He had a sort of long stay visitor visa. Right?
Yeah, and
permanent residency.
Yeah, we grant the permanent residency. Actually, basically visa is for 1 year. That is extendable. That can be extended.
Okay. So as it stands, it's the crux of what you're saying is if you submit the correct documentation and it goes through the process, it's not a problem to come and work in Sri Lanka. I think that's because the focus of work in Sri Lanka is having people to come and work, and whether you get over the first barrier, which is entry into the country, and as Ranjit pointed out, it can be done.
I can easily say the processing visa is not a problem at the immigration.
Yes, we are all quite impressed by the passports, but of course, since we haven't had the reason to obtain visa, we don't know that side of the department. Prajit, you have been setting up businesses, and you're in the business of venture capital. How has the process been practically? And because you yourself, you're a returnee, and you have a lot of companies with returnees, with foreign, with non-nationals working in them. How easy has the practice been in obtaining visas? And
so most of the guys who have actually started companies here, all nationals. We've had a few non-nationals coming and working, But from the investor perspective, we've had non-nationals coming in investing, like the Indian Angel Network. We've had no issues so far with funds coming through it's called the share investment account. So if you open this share investment account, it's pretty straightforward. You can open it through any bank you like, and most of these guys tend to use HSBC or ICICI Bank because it's from India. And the Lankan Angel Network is associated with the Indian Angel Network today, and Indian Angel Network is the largest angel network in India. Right? So they started this about 6 years ago, and when we launched this last year here, by that time we had funded about 12, 13 companies with about $1.5 million, and 70% of them money came from India. And there was no issue. There were a few teething issues in terms of, so it was issue on both sides, because from one side the investor did not read the whole thing properly. And I think more so it was the problem with the investor more than the structure, because for us, I went through the whole process when we did our company, the Blue Ocean Ventures, went through this. And my partner sits in India, and when he had to transfer his funds across, it was a very straightforward process. So we didn't have any issues there. And similarly with the OIA account, which is the Overseas Investment Account, so as a local, if I was to invest outside, there's an Overseas Investment Account, which is also quite straightforward. Again, a few hiccups here and there because certain individuals in the banks don't know what OIA means and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's all teething issues where training is, has to be done.
Okay. Thank you, Bridget. I think you already did half of Shanaz's explanations as well. So, Shanaz, if you could, let's just go into the transfer of money, because Professor Samarjiva also highlighted that money can be, there are certain hiccups when it comes to transferring money. Shanaz, could you explain how it is for an employee in Sri Lanka, because how their residency changes when they come? And for the individual, he already touched on investors, but let's start with the individual, because we have individuals who are here coming to work. What would they be able to do and not be able to do?
Okay, first of all, I have to take it as a compliment, because so far he's okay with the exchange control regulations that we have imposed, and it seems to be okay. So with that compliment, if it is an individual who is working in Sri Lanka and who is trying to work in Sri Lanka as an expatriate, there are several accounts that we have designated for them. So they can open an RNNFC, Resident Non-National Foreign Currency account, where they are permitted to convert their rupee earnings into the RNNFC account, and then for upkeeping their families abroad, they can also remit the money out of the RNNFC account. And also, let's say the individual who's working in Sri Lanka, if he's a resident, if he's earning foreign currency exchange as a professional service provider, and there's another account we have designated for them, we call it as a foreign currency account for international service providers and its employees. So if you're eligible to open that foreign currency account, you'll be, it's very easy for you to deposit your salary monthly and then remit whatever the proceeds into your households to upkeep your families abroad. And also the residents who are in Sri Lanka, if they're earning foreign currency exchange, they can open a we call it FIA, Foreign Exchange Earners Account, which we introduced in 2012. So with that account, any resident who's earning foreign currency can deposit the income into FIA account and then utilize that funds in the FIA account for their investment purpose and as well as for the current account transaction purposes.
So there is no distinction between BOI and non-BOI here, is there?
Normally, when it comes to BOI companies, there are two types of companies that we can see. That is one company, normally the companies which are registered under Section 16, which will be subject to all the rules and regulations in the country as a company, a normal company which has been already incorporated. if we look at the companies which are registered under Section 17, those are the companies which will be exempted from the Exchange Control Act. But in that, we can't assure that all of them who are registered under Section 17 will be exempted from the exchange control. It's because you have to look at the agreement between the parties, that means the company and the BOI, because in the agreement they will specify up to which extent that they have been granted the exemptions. So you can't generalize when it comes to the BOI companies.
If I can just ask Prajit a question, a follow-up from that. Are most of your companies Section 17 companies,
No.
Section 16 or no BOI?
Blue Ocean Ventures is a BOI company, but we are under Section 16. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what that means. Because we have not got any benefits yet. And we are not looking for any benefits in that sense. But I would now look at getting benefits for all the startups that we have done, because all these seed funds need to grow and they need all the help they can get.
Right.
And you know, so I spoke to the governor today and said, you know, we should look at giving not us but the companies some tax grants. You know, because if you look at countries like Canada, UK, Australia, where the tax system is great for angel funding, and that's why it's growing. And as a result, there's a lot of FDIs coming into those countries. And also entrepreneurship is growing. With that, employment is created, economy grows, you know?
Yeah. So that we would like a system, because Professor Samarjiva was talking about BOI being an island, so to say. So if the structure comes outside the BOI system, then there would not be the special case. And then, so hopefully that solution will come outside the BOI system so that it is applicable for everyone. So let's see how that goes.
It doesn't matter how it comes.
Yeah, as long as it comes. Shahnaz, just to get back to you. So exchange control has been liberalizing a lot in the past few years, and I think this is because of the flexibility that the economy has been able to have due to the economic growth. Could you just point out what recent developments that have taken place? The reason that I want Shahnaz to speak on this is because we're talking about overcoming barriers, and as Professor Samarjiva also pointed out, it is a continuous progressive system, and Sri Lanka has already, a lot of the institutions have already started in this process. Immigration, exchange control, many other institutions are very progressive. And if you could just explain the liberalizations that have been taking place the past few years.
Yeah, Kanchana, actually Exchange Control Department is an agency function of the government of Sri Lanka, which is undertaken by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So the establishment of the Exchange Control Act is in 1953. As the name suggests, it's actually the regulator of the foreign currencies, like foreign exchange transaction in the Sri Lankan economy. But starting from 1977, open economic policy, the exchange control regulations have been gradually relaxed. If you look at 1994, with the signing of IMF Article 8, the current account is actually it's a convertible current account. That means all the transactions, the current accounts transactions are freely, you can actually do transactions, current account transactions, freely without any restriction over that. But when it comes to the capital account transactions, there were certain restriction over the capital account transaction. When I refer capital account transaction, that means purchasing of assets and investing abroad, the foreign direct investment coming into Sri Lanka, and migrant fund transfers, all these comes under capital account transactions. So starting from 2011, actually 2010, the Exchange Control Department realized that we need to keep in par with the other countries, developing countries, or developed countries actually. When we look at other countries, we thought of like liberalizing the capital account in a like extensive manner. Because I'll just mention a few of the examples. From 1997, we were attracting FDIs, and there were a circular that we have issued for the foreign direct investors who come in and invest in Sri Lankan shares. But it hasn't, it can be either listed shares and non-listed both. in 2010. Prior to that, actually, that account which we designated for the share investment called as Sierra. Some people may have heard about Sierra. And for the T-bill investment, there was another account called Tierra D. For the bonds, there was an account called Tierra. And for diaspora, there was another account called Tierra D. So all these are very cumbersome, cumbersome when it comes to the investor's point of view. So in 2010, what we did was we amalgamated all these accounts, that is Sierra, Tierra, Tierra 2, Tierra D, into one account, and we call and named that account as a securities investment account, which Mr. Prajit mentioned about, SIA. So now, in 2013, June onwards, we have opened up a lot of avenues for the foreign investors to route their money through this SIA. Previously, we only focused about getting equity from them, but from the year 2013, this year onwards, we open up the opportunity for them to grant loans, because as per the normal regulations, any resident company needs to get approval from the Exchange Control Department prior to getting loans. But with the introduction of the ECBS, we call it External Commercial Borrowing Scheme, the companies registered in Sri Lanka need not had to take any permission from the Exchange Control Department. So even those money that is they are going to lend to the Sri Lankan companies can be routed through SIA. And also property for the investment in properties, and also units, debentures, and also T-bills, T-bonds, preference shares, not only ordinary shares, units, as I mentioned. So all these avenues are now available for the foreign investors to route their money through SIA. Only requirement is that they have to route the money through SIA. As long as they invested through the SIA, there won't be any issue at the time of repatriating their sale proceeds or their dividends, their whatever the profits. And also, when it comes to establishing branch offices in Sri Lanka, it's also possible through SIA. Previously, we had a separate account for that. In 2010, when we are introducing the general permission for the companies incorporated abroad to have their branch office, liaison office, representative office in Sri Lanka, they had to invest through a special account called IIA, Inward Investment Account. So after that, in 2013, January onwards, we abolished the IIA account and we allowed them to invest through SIA. So that's how we have been changing, time to time, we have been relaxing our regulations with the intention that to promote the investor convenience, and it actually promotes the monitoring of the central bank as well. So both the intentions were met by amalgamating all these things into one account and allowing them to route the money through SIA.
Thank you, Shahnaz. I think this, Shahnaz went to very extensively and comprehensively explained the changes that came about in 2010 and how they made investing easier. And also as a resident employee, you will have your transfer of money becomes very easy. I had a conversation with Sujiva yesterday, and he pointed out how even when you have a fixed dollar guarantee for your salary, the advantages of that in the present company structure, regardless of whether you're being paid in dollars or not. Sujiva, would you just like to share that before we go into the next topic, which is related as well?
I think just to respond to some of the points that Rohan raised as well, I think over the last few years, we've made things much simpler than where we were 5 years ago. I think we all agree, but we still have some progress to be made. I mean, it's not, let's be honest, it's not as easy as it's in Singapore or Hong Kong. I mean, that's reality. But if you ask me, are we better than India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, Myanmar? You just name it, we are far better. I mean, it's no comparison. It's no point comparing any one of the South Asian SAARC countries. I mean, we are far superior, whether it's on employment, whether it's getting work permits, starting companies, repatriation of money, dividends, technical fees, management fees, you just name it. Getting money out of this country is far superior. Our tax rates are much better. But the bottom line is we need to be, in my view, we need to aspire to be as good as Hong Kong or Singapore. So that's, I mean, that's bottom line, but we are much better. I mean, just to answer your question, Kanchana, is that, I mean, we have, I mean, over the years, I mean, there have been many expats who've been working here. And I've seen what they do is, as you know, I mean, because the legal form of currency is rupees, but the fact is when most of them come, if they are, for example, employed by foreign currency earning companies, I mean, they agree on a dollar salary, but they're paid in rupees. But the fact is, you can, when you come in, you can say, I want X thousand of dollars when I come in, but you're paid for in rupees. So the fact is that you're, to some extent, you're covered against any fluctuation in the dollar, in the rupee fluctuation. And and I think, as explained very well, is for them to repatriate money to upkeep their parents, kids, anyone, you know, spouse and children, absolutely no problem at all. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, as it stands now.
Sujiva, if you could just continue to discuss about the competitiveness of earnings, because we discussed this yesterday, and you also raised country comparisons, and just highlight this in the light of the present tax regime, and also whether there is a difference or whether someone would have more. I think it also goes as a no-brainer in the high potential areas that people, there are certain industries that have higher earnings and how they benefit from the tax system, because there are certain industries that get a lot of tax benefits regardless of their BOI status. So if you could just explain that aspect as well.
I mean, if you take taxes, until this year, as an individual, our highest rate of tax was 24%, which is damn good compared to a Sri Lankan in UK, someone in Netherlands, someone in Australia. You'll pay anything close to 50%. You pay anything close to 50% is your highest bracket of tax. Ours is 24, so you pay half the amount. And believe it or not, a month ago when His Excellency, the President, announced the budget speech, he said he's going to bring it down to 16% for professionals. So we will pay 1/3 of a Sri Lankan professional working anywhere in the Western world, will be paying 1/3 of the taxes. 16%. We need to wait and see. The legislation is still not out. We need to wait until the actual legislation comes out. We never asked for it. But the fact is, I think the thinking behind the ST, Secretary of the Treasury, was that he wanted to make sure that the professionals are retained in this country to take it to the next level. I think that's the whole idea behind it. And it was not something that the professional bodies or the professional institutes pushed for. That we understand we need to pay some form of taxes, and at 24%, it's not a bad rate. It's a pretty good rate, actually. I mean, I've worked overseas. I'm used to paying anything close to 50%. So commencing next year, I may be paying only 16%. So, but as I said, we need to wait and see until the legislation is out. If you take comparative earnings, I mean, if you take, I mean, especially in my profession, if you take the accountancy field, I would say what you would earn here is far better than what you would earn anywhere in this part of the region. I mean, you need to compare that with cost of living, our per capita incomes, our GDP. I mean, so many variable factors. But I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think professionals here earn a decent salary I mean, and live comfortably here. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, irrespective of the professions, the earnings are good. I've seen where we say actually the multiples of the lowest earning sort of workers to the professionals, the multiples here is actually much higher than what you would get in Europe or in most of the developed world. So that means our gap is much higher. And it clearly says that the earnings of the professionals is, I mean, I would say in Sri Lankan context, I don't think you can grumble.
If I could just stay with you on that, and if you could just touch on dual taxation, how that works.
See, at the moment we've signed anything close to about 40 double tax treaties. We are maybe 39, 40, 41, somewhere around there until end of last year. I don't have the numbers for 2013. So what it says is that, say for example, you're an Australian national. You come and work here for one of the, say, one of the high-tech IT companies. You will pay for your taxes according to the Sri Lankan law. You will pay here 24% max. In the event you are asked to, for whatever the reason, is that you are asked to pay for taxes in Australia for your earnings in Sri Lanka, because of the double tax treaty, you can actually set off the taxes what you have paid here. But I mean, I haven't seen this happening too often when it comes to professionals. It's very, I mean, very much applicable to companies who have invested here and so on from those countries. But in a rare situation where you are requested to pay for your worldwide income, you can actually set off the taxes what you paid here. But because now you will be paying, going forward, you will be paying only 16%. Unfortunately, you'll have to pay taxes in those countries because you'll be asked to pay anything close to 50% in those countries. So you'll have technically about a 34% taxes where you may be liable for in those countries because you're paying much higher taxes, whether it's the US, UK, anywhere in Europe. I think Netherlands is a good example. Australia, New Zealand, tax rates are 40, 45, 50%. I think some countries are about 52.
Thank you, Sujiva. In the interest of time, this is actually a very important topic, and we can discuss this further in the discussion, in the audience discussion that we have. I will move to the next topic that I want to discuss, which has been raised from morning, which is entrepreneurship, the alternative to finding a job in a company in Sri Lanka. Prajeet, co-founder of the Lanka Angel Network, can you please explain how someone can come here and start up an enterprise?
Very easy. Join the network. It's called the Lankan Angel Network. And the framework is very clearly defined. The website is called, it's www.lankanangelnetwork.com. So if you're an entrepreneur looking to start a business here or in Australia or Singapore, wherever, you can apply through the network. You send in your business plan, and you could have a conference call or a Skype call and do the presentation via Skype, which we have had with plenty of entrepreneurs who have come to us from around the world. And if so basically, once you do the pitch, it will go out to the network, which is almost about 300 high net worth investors. Right, so the 300 people consist from India and Sri Lanka, and there are a few from Australia and US and UK as well. So these investors will look at the plans, and if they like it, they will come and form a subgroup, and then you go out with them and they start doing the valuation of the company, and then they discuss with you, negotiate with you, and they would take a small equity in your company in return for money for the number of years you need for the first step. In general, if it's concept, what we say is we'll take about 20, 25 to 30% for the first year of operation. So you may need about 10 million rupees for the first year of operation, and we take a small equity. And the reason why we take that is to ensure that the entrepreneurship is not killed. The entrepreneur can survive and go on until about round 3, 4. Right? After the third round, obviously you lose majority control of the company, but by that time you would have grown big, and your bank will be much richer in the sense that you started with nothing and you ended up with some equity, or you ended up with some good valuation for your company.
How do you identify potential areas in Sri Lanka in this current economic environment, and do you see mergers and acquisitions as a growth strategy in Sri Lanka as well? Because let's say one is you're in the business of identifying feasible business business projects, and the other is if someone already has capital of their own, they would like to proceed. So if you can just explain on that.
Most of these guys, they come down. They are all basically. I'm a third generation entrepreneur or fourth. As far as I can remember, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur, and so am I. So I had jobs. I worked for different companies in Australia, UK, and in Canada. And I came back here after living overseas for 20 years. And I came back in 2002. At that time, in December, we came back sometime in December, and I remember the lights, Christmas time, there was plenty of lights around the country, and I thought this is going to boom from here on. And then we took a good dip, and I went through a roller coaster, which was good, because today I'm in a better position to look at things going forward. And I was able to study the market conditions here, so it was really good in that sense. And that's how we started this whole thing. Yeah.
Right. And so you're a success story. I want to look at the alternative to these two options, which I think Professor Samarjiva might be able to tell us, which is we now have people who are attached to foreign companies but working in Sri Lanka, in other locations with the increase of technology, and you yourself is someone like that, I think, to a certain extent. How easy is that? How easy is it to operate in that way, where you even we have members in the Work in Sri Lanka team who operate like that. They are located here, but they're actually working for companies outside through leakages.
Well, I'd sort of rephrase the question. You work for companies outside, or you work as a knowledge worker, as a consultant? When I came back in 1985, I tried to set up a consulting business here, a little too ahead of my time, I think. And I can remember one of the biggest problems that we had at that point was access to the world's knowledge. So I can remember I used to write proposals. I can remember writing a proposal for Justice Amarasinghe, who was then Secretary of the Ministry of Justice. And I had a separate line which said database access, so that I could actually spend money and gain access to legal databases. Today, this is nothing, because the internet and the business models behind the internet are basically allowing us to have access to information, to knowledge at a level that is completely equalizes the playing field, right? I mean, it's about the same. What I've told my people is, most of what you want you can get on the internet, and if you want to buy anything, just tell me. It's much easier for me to pay for those things, $30, $40 a pop, than to buy journals and keep them around that nobody reads, right? So that is sort of one part of the equation. In terms of people working for companies outside, I have never done this. I know somebody who has. That's called Sanjeev Veeravarna. When he came back, he was actually working for IBM Research in the United States, and he was physically here, but he was working there. And for people who think about coming in hard times, this guy, I think, landed in the airport when the LTT had taken out half the aircraft of Sri Lanka. I thought I had done something big by coming in after the World Trade Center was bombed, but that sort of takes the cake, 2001. So what it does, it really screws up your sleep patterns, right? Those days, I could talk to him in the morning, but I couldn't talk to him in the evenings, because even today, I mean, I am in a situation where my wife says, "Aren't you coming to dinner?" No. I got calls, I got conference calls, 7, that's a favorite time for the East Coast in the United States. You're dealing with East Coast United States, 7 to 9, you're continually on the phone. But it's not like the old days where phone calls were expensive, where internet was sporadic. I was telling somebody I was Director General of Telecom in 1998 here. I was the main man, and I had dial-up internet, right? Things have just dramatically improved in terms of connectivity. And my argument is, we no longer have any excuses. If you want to run I tell my friends, if you want to run a consulting business, this is one of the better places. I mean, there are problems here. I'll tell you what the problems are. Because I used to tell that, I had like 4 criteria for where I wanted to live. One was, did it have a good airport and good connections? Another was, could I get visas easily? Did people have embassies and consulates and so on, and internet connectivity? And the last one was it acceptable to my wife? Now that's the hardest one to meet. You must remember, one of the things that I missed in the conversation so far is that these are never individual decisions. These are collective decisions. You take it with your wife, you take it with your husband. In my case, I took it with the entire family because I moved teenagers, right? So leave that aside, that's a tough one. Sri Lanka's problem is, this visa problem is hard, right? And that is not your fault, sir. It is, you know, many other people's faults. We have a really bad passport. And, you know, you have to get visas to go to God knows where, you know, you have to get a visa to go to Bangladesh, right? Whereas, you know, many other countries, you can just walk into countries very easily. So that's a problem. I was counting the number of airlines coming into Washington Dulles, and that's some 32, and we have got about 33, slightly higher, right? Now, I still would argue, you know, connectivity is not as great, but generally speaking, things have improved, even on the connectivity front, right? So visas, connectivity, internet, I mean, we could be better. One of the things that I've always wanted is I wanted like telepresence kinds of things all over the place. And we really haven't got proper video conferencing facilities here. And our companies have been slow. I even begged and pleaded with Tatas and got them to demonstrate a system here in this very room when I ran one of my conferences. I said purposely, I want somebody from outside to come in on a video link. And it wasn't great, because we are still not putting enough bandwidth into that. There are certain things that can be done to improve the bandwidth situation for companies and the pricing situation for companies. Our lease line prices, our international connectivity, the prices could be much, much better if the regulator gets a move on it. But other than that, I would say this is a pretty, you know, the conditions are coming together.
Because we now have over 100% mobile coverage in the country and all the...
Yeah, but again,
listen,
I mean, I'm not complaining about voice connectivity.
Yeah.
I mean, that is old news.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is data connectivity for companies and for information professionals, knowledge workers, so that, I don't know how many of you have experienced telepresence, Cisco's system. I mean, telepresence. John Chambers had given, I mean, it's a long story, but he had given a telepresence unit for the Palestine territory. We don't have a telepresence system here. And telepresence is so good that you like feel like, you know, picking up a cup of coffee and sort of giving it to the people on the other side of the screen. It's like they're here. That's the kind of thing we need. And I would say there's a business opportunity for somebody to build up that kind of facility in this country, and also to give the business to them. I mean, the people in the distance learning center have got a lot of great facilities in Slida, where you can conduct interviews, you can conduct off-site business and so on. And they're complaining to me, saying, why isn't anybody coming and using our services? So I think companies have also got to think in that way. Conduct interviews, conduct business, do all kinds of things using the technology.
Taking from that, Ranjit, if someone, a non-national, wants to come to Sri Lanka and work for a company that is abroad, because you mentioned that they have to submit documents from their company here to get visa. What is the visa situation for non-nationals? Because Sri Lankans can come and easily start working and through the internet, and no one would even know until the exchange control picks up on their chances. But for non-nationals, how does it work?
Yeah, actually, Professor Samarji mentioned that identifying the purview of this, the companies, it's difficult to define what is the ministry they have to get that recommendation. That's the main problem people have. Anyway, that we have a separate scheme for these kind of people actually. That is, we call it as multiple entry business visa. So if a person is a director of a company, they can easily get that the visa, multiple entry business visa. They have to show that they are the registered limited liability company, and sometimes the people are in difficult to get this recommendation, but with considering the contribution to the development of the country, the Controller General can decide this kind of visa can be granted. So multiple entry business visa, but the condition of that visa is that they have to stay, the period is 1 year, but there's the stay period on that visa. The maximum, probably maximum is 3 months. Within every 3 months time, they have to leave and come back.
Okay. Shanaz, does the exchange control regulation, is it the same for this type of worker who is attached to a company outside Sri Lanka as it is to any other, because they do get a multiple entry business visa. Would the exchange control regulations be the same where they can apply as residents and have the same accounts?
When it comes to the residencyship and in view of the exchange control regulations, we go by the permanent place of abode, whether it's Sri Lanka or elsewhere.
Okay.
So if the person is entering Sri Lanka like several times, it's like a bit of difficulty for us to decide whether he's a resident or non-resident. So based on like if he can be like regarded as a resident, then all the regulations which are applicable for residents will be applicable for him. If we treat him as a non-resident, then definitely all the non-resident regulations which are applicable for them will be same to him.
Okay, right. Before we open the floor, just one last round of questions from the panel, which is this conference, we've called it Work in Sri Lanka, Asia's Next Knowledge Hub. And this panel, we've aimed it at being the ultimate work destination. Gillian in the morning said that the vision of Work in Sri Lanka is to make Sri Lanka the #1 work destination. So we are aiming right to the top. But we have to be aware that there are many other countries who have similar goals. If you take Singapore, Dubai, they've already started becoming those hubs, and they are ahead of us. So in this process, Sujiva, if I could ask you, what is the readiness in terms of the middle management, the work ethics in Sri Lanka to translate these policies, these very ambitious goals that we have set for ourselves into action to actually achieve this status of becoming the #1 work destination?
I think it's important to sort of look at it in context. See, when you're coming off a 30-year-old conflict, it takes time. And if you especially take the private sector, they will always take a kind of a wait-and-see kind of approach, kind of attitude. And I think that's what has happened over the last 3.5 years. And government, to their credit, I think they've been sort of on full steam moving forward, irrespective of whether the private sector was putting their hand up or not. But I think starting, I mean, we've seen sort of so much enthusiasm towards the middle part of, or the second part of this year, and then I'm sure 2014 and beyond is when you see some of the large projects, some of the initiatives which the private sector has, I mean, commencing now and going forward. And I think sort of they are ready for it. Again, government is doing, in my view, a terrific job on some of the fronts, especially the infrastructure front, making sure as much as possible getting the macroeconomic indicators in control. Not easy, but I think they've done a terrific job over the last couple of years. A lot more to be done. And I'm sure the private sector will respond. And I get the feeling is responding now. When you speak to some of the entrepreneurs with some of the plans, what they have is amazing. I mean, what they have, some of the plans for Colombo is I think Defense Secretary showed some of the pictures in the morning. I mean, that's entirely done by the private sector. It's not the government sector driven. So, I mean, short answer to your question is, I think the private sector is ready. Macro fundamental looks good, and I'm sure over the next couple of years, I'm generally an optimistic guy. I mean, I want to.
I think most of us here.
And I think they will respond, and then there'll be great opportunity. I mean, I'll just to share with you is I think Rohan raised an important point. Is you need to, if you want people to come back to Colombo. I had a colleague who was with PwC. I mean, when I asked him, why don't you come and work with me for 2 years? He said, 2 things, Sujiva, can you look after? He said, salary is no issue. He told me, I'm earning £200,000 in London. That's my salary. I am willing to take a pay cut. That's absolutely no issue. And I wanted him to come in as a partner to my firm. Second one, he said, I'm married to a British girl. Can you accommodate her? I'll be on the next flight. So I said, don't worry. I said, you come over and we will make sure that she's employed. And we did employ her for 2 years because we thought, I mean, we had enough British clients. So we could actually get her in to handle some of those large accounts. And he stayed here for 2 years as a partner of my firm. I know he took a huge pay cut from his £200,000 is 40 million rupees a year. But he said, Sujiva, what I learned in Colombo is far better, the exposure he got, than the 15 years he's been in London, heart of London, in the London Bridge office. You know, see, they love it, but you need to create that atmosphere. What is it that's holding them back from coming in? In his case was his British wife, just married. And thinking, if I have to leave her at home, and when he has to work, say, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and she's at home all the time, all alone, it's going to be a problem. Because she'll start grumbling. The points that, it's very valid, but the points are wrong. But he loved it. He said, I'm happy to come over whenever you want me. I'm happy to come over again. So that's just to share with you. Yeah. You need to look at it as a collective decision. I think that's really important.
Yeah. We are not out of time, but we are running short of time. So I will pause this discussion and open the floor for questions. I think we already have hands up. We have mics. Yes. If you could please tell us your name and what you do and which country you're from.
Sure. My name is Cam, and I was invited to come to Sri Lanka in September. And I was invited by a BOI to come over, and I thought I would test the waters first, and so I just did a 6-month tourism visa. Then when we went specifically to ask for a residency, I guess because the BOI isn't profitable, and it may have to do with Section 16, Section 17, I'm not sure. I was wondering if you could clarify if there's anything that relates to whether the BOI is profitable, so they don't think it's possible for me to get a residency because the BOI is not paying taxes because it's not in a profitable situation. Can you clarify that for me?
Professor, would you? I
think you're asking about a company's profitability, right?
The company is not profitable.
It's a BOI.
It's a
company.
BOI.
It's a little too technical.
So basically what you're asking is, because it's not profitable, do you not get the residence visa?
Right. I was told that unless I was doing some FDI, foreign direct investment, bringing over $100,000, $150,000 personally, that I would not be approved for a residence visa.
Yeah, there is an actual legal requirement for 150,000 fixed deposit, right?
Yes.
No, rupees.
Is it not rupees or dollars?
Would you know the BOI?
No, when someone is coming in as an investor, what is the requirement? They have to have a BOI? No, under your visa.
To obtain visa
yeah.
for a BOI company, because what she's asking is her company is not presently profitable, therefore she can't get the residence visa. Is that a situation like that? Where if the company is not profitable, they won't be given residence visa?
Might be. I don't have
You're not sure about that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I'll take that offline, I think.
Yes. But we will. But why don't you stay in touch with Work in Sri Lanka? We'll try to clarify that for you.
And then a quick question for Prajit, just real quick. On the concept stage of a proposal that we would put in front of your company, how extensive a business plan is necessary for that? And do you give any, I think you do provide some kind of assistance on formulating the presentation?
There is a guideline. In the website, if you go, there is a guideline.
Okay.
And there are a few questions that you need to answer, and that becomes your business plan. It's a 2-page plan. You just send that to us, and once we go through it, we'll get back to you and ask you to come in and do a pitch.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a question on the other side. Yeah? Right. There's a mic coming. You can speak to that.
Thanks. So it's very easy to answer on her question. When it's Section 16, she has to invest $250,000. She has to issue in shares. Then after that, she needs a recommendation of the BOI, she needs a recommendation of the Ministry of Defense, and then she has to sit one day at immigration to get finally her residential visa for 1 year. You know, this is the procedure.
Then
you know, it's, I'm terribly sorry, sir, I'm a foreigner, I think you can see. It's, you know, you just give a good news show, but reality is not like this. You know, it's very difficult to get residential visa. You have to fight, you have to sit at BOI for hours. Then the Director General is not there, it's the only person who can sign. Then you have to wait at the Ministry of Defense. It's not the way you offer, it's not the way you present it. Believe me, it's very, very difficult. You know, I did it for myself. Now I have for 3 years residential visa. I have it for my other directors, but it's a headache, it's a headache, it's a headache. You know, you see, you're the expert, for sure you should be the expert here, but you can even not give an answer on such a simple question. And this is all the time like this. You know, I'm very happy that the lady of exchange control is over there. She can, the explanation is perfect, but I assure you, you can go here to 95% of lawyers, 95% of accountants, they all give you a different explanation. They all give you a different explanation. I'm not going to give my identity, you know, I want to be incognito, because...
Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you.
No, I have my residential visa, it's all okay, no worry. But we were in trouble with exchange control a few years ago, now it's all settled, because we got wrong information of chartered accountants, of lawyers, and this and this and this, you know. Fact is, imagine as foreign investor, when we arrive, imagine we can just go to exchange control and we can have a talk and they give the explanation. It would be great. But this is not the reality. You know, we arrive here, we need to find a lawyer, we need to find a chartered accountant, and they just talk around and they just tell some stories. And believe me, only in 5% of the cases you get the right explanation. It's the same for that lady now. Maybe she's here from September. She even does not know how to arrange her things. Imagine she goes tomorrow to an accountant or a lawyer, he's going to give some explanation. Next week she goes to someone else, he's going to give another explanation. Believe me, I don't know for Sri Lankans who come back how it is, but for foreigners, yeah, that's the only word I find now, it's hell.
I think Sanjeeva wants to respond to your question. I would also like to add to that later.
So I run a company which is under BOI Section 17, and we've hired more than 10 foreigners in the 8 years we've operated, and we've had absolutely no such experience like what you described. I have not participated, hold on, let me finish. We have never had any need to participate in any kind of corruption. We are not a profitable company, we are a venture-funded company, we are growing, and we've hired more than 10 foreigners. And there is a process we have followed to bring a person in, and we follow that process, and we get a residence visa for the person to live and work here. Yeah. There's never been any problem at all.
I understand. You know, now at this moment we also have 12 foreigners, including me. You know, once you know the system, it's all fine. But it's not easy as a foreigner to find the system.
So
look over there.
I agree. It is up to
look over there. Look over there. She's there. She's here since September, and she does not know what to do.
So the problem is, I would not expect the foreigner to go find it. I am the one who's running the company. We have an HR department and we have an organization that knows how to run the process. When we hire a person, it is our responsibility, just like when I worked in the US as a Sri Lankan person working in the US, it was my employer who got me the visa. I didn't have to go get a lawyer and go figure all this nonsense out. Same here. I do that for the people who work in my company.
Yeah, okay, but once again, when you arrive here as an investor, you know the company is not there yet. So you really have to start from zero, like she wants to do. This is starting, you know, it's very clear she's a foreigner. She has to start from zero.
She has to, but there are different scenarios. We are not, if you're talking about, hold on, if you're talking about an investor coming in and doing something different
I'm the investor.
From an employee.
I'm not the employee,
so
I'm the investor.
Work in Sri Lanka. We're talking, but primarily if it's an employee, it's a whole different scenario. There is
but she will not be, she's not the employee because she goes to BOI. Obviously she's an investor also.
I think what we're identifying here is that there is an information gap. And this actually, the Work in Sri Lanka website was started exactly to try and address this. And in our site, we are trying our best to kind of have a one-stop portal where anyone, not only Sri Lankans who know the right lawyer to go to or the right accountant to go to, but you can go to anyone from anywhere in the world before coming to Sri Lanka can go to this site and see if the information that you want is there. If it is not there, we're actually very interactive as Gillian told in the morning. You can email contact@Work in Sri Lanka, and if you have a query and if we immediately don't have the answer, we try to contact. Now, in your case, it's BOI because I don't think it's a visa. It's not immigration because your problem is actually at the BOI level, and unfortunately, we don't have anyone from the BOI in this panel. So you could get in touch with Work in Sri Lanka. We'll try our best to get in touch with the BOI and try to help you. And we've done this for many queries, and if you have, and this is exactly what Work in Sri Lanka is trying to do because there is this information gap, and you have completely different accounts of the same experience. So we want to try and bridge this gap so that people don't have to say that they don't have the information and that's why they're stuck making a decision. Yeah. Do we have any more pressing questions? Because we are out of time. Oh, we have one. Can we just, the lady over there, yeah?
Hello, I'm Zoe. I'm currently the Managing Director of iSecond Sri Lanka. As we've seen, we have an amazing vision for Sri Lanka in 2020, and we're becoming a hub, and we're growing and developing so fast. So what is the value for us in Sri Lanka to get talent, to get people who have a global mindset, who have had that international experience, to come back into Sri Lanka?
Sorry, if you could just tell us what your company does.
Actually, we're a global youth development organisation. So we develop young people who have certain skills, certain competencies and global mindset as well by running an international internship program.
And you're asking how they could find job placements?
No.
A broader question.
No.
If you could just, I missed out, would you want to answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're asking a broader question about how, I think one of the key issues that we have to really internalize, and I think that's something everybody in government and outside government has to do, is what does a knowledge hub mean? It means knowledge coming in, knowledge workers coming in, knowledge workers going out, returning. That's what a hub means. We really haven't got all the pieces in our heads yet, particularly in government. We don't have the idea that we must encourage people to come in for short and long periods, and then, people should be able to leave, and that whole back and forth is not really internalized yet. So I think that's part of what events like this are doing. At no point did I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else, did I say things were perfect. I said there is opacity, I said there is discretion, I said we have problems, we have mindset problems. What we have to do is to get beyond them. And just whining and moaning doesn't get us beyond that. I think what will get us beyond that is engaging with the issues, discussing our differences, and coming up with solutions and identifying opportunities. So that's something we really have to do. I don't think we are quite there yet, as far as I'm concerned. We got a long way to go.
I don't think any of us think we are there yet, because then we would already be the #1 work destination. And the reason that we have is and try to reach that goal that we need to get to. And it's been very heartening to see the two sides of issues. We've seen the progress that the institutional framework, the private sector mindset has been making, and we also see that there are still issues and mindset blockages as well as information gaps. And these are the things that we need to address as we try to overcome challenges and barriers. And I think the take home is that if you come across any issue, it's not to go around complaining to people who can't solve that issue. It's trying to either make a solution on your own, which is what Work in Sri Lanka actually is. It was just a volunteer initiative where we thought there is a problem here and we need to solve this, and we just started it. So likewise, if you see a problem, try to see how you can overcome the problem, and try to share it with everyone else. This is Work in Sri Lanka. It's also an open forum. It's totally made up by volunteers. So if you find an issue, if you can't find the solution, try to get in touch with us. And if you find the solution, get in touch as well and let us know so that we can share it with everyone. And on that note, since we've been running behind schedule, I'll try to reduce the delay. We'll close this session, and I hope that all of you got some amount of good information and also found places that you can find solutions and seriously use all of this information, this wealth of expertise that we have in Sri Lanka, in this network, to make an informed decision to work in Sri Lanka. Thank you.